Hello, Democrats, Republicans, and everyone in between. Welcome to Aaron Shack Politics. Today on the show, we have a lot to discuss from the latest in Gaza and the West Bank, updates on what's going on there, to United Healthcare denying more claims and a larger discussion on that, as well as the California wildfires and insurance claims also being dropped in that. So let's go ahead and jump in. I have a video here about how Israel is able to starve 2.3 million. So let's jump in. Let's check out this video of how Israel was able to starve 2.3 million.
Israel, able to starve 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza so quickly and so completely.
UN report proves that Israel's starvation of Gaza didn't start on October 7th, 2023. We have
never seen in modern history this speed of starvation ever. Of course, this doesn't start in October 7th.
Nothing
you can go
does.
Back multiple points in time. From 2000 to 2023, Israel has a profound degree of control over Gaza. And it's like a faucet that you tighten and loosen. And they would make sure that the Palestinians in Gaza were just hungry enough to not raise alarms. They were counting calories and measuring what is allowed in to make sure that everyone remained hungry in Gaza, but not so hungry that it raised alarm bells in the international humanitarian world. So that on October 6th, 2023, half of people in Gaza were food insecure and 80% depended on humanitarian aid. This is an attempt to use starvation to displace people, to kill people, to annihilate people, as an attempt to erase the Palestinians from history and from their land in order for Israel to fully annex Palestinian territory. And we see that their annexation plan continues now into Lebanon.
And Syria, to be fair. Once again, we have another report here from Al Jazeera. The Palestinian Authority shut down Al Jazeera in the occupied West Bank over inciting material. We're going to dive in more later in the show what the Palestinian Authority does, but they are not necessarily a governmental body that is built and meant for Palestinians. It is also monitored and controlled by Israel, and they operate as sort of almost an extension of an Israeli force. So they're kind of meant to be a way to temper the Palestinian people. The action comes a week after the PA criticized Al Jazeera for its coverage of raids by Palestinian and Israeli security forces on the West Bank city of Jenin. PA is following the example of Israel, which banned Al Jazeera from broadcasting in the country last May. It has worked with Israel on security operations for years. Israel has also been directly targeting journalists, killing over 200 media workers in October of 2023. So you tell me if Israel is doing the right thing here, and there's nothing, no wrongdoing, there's no starvation, no genocide, no direct targeting of the press or medical or humanitarian work, then why won't they allow the free press into Gaza and the West Bank and to cover things accordingly if there's no wrongdoing? So how about that? Think on that. So once again, continuing on what's going on in Gaza, we have a Gaza police chief among dozens of Palestinians killed in Israeli attacks. Enclave rocked by wave of deadly attacks from Jabalia camp in north to a safe humanitarian zone of Al-Mawasi in the south. And we have an image right here on screen. Palestinians shelter in tents in the Al-Mawasi area of southern Gaza on January 1st of 2025, which has come under relentless attack by Israel's military. Israeli airstrikes across the Gaza Strip have killed at least 71 people, including the head of the enclave's police force and his deputy, Palestinian authorities have said. Israeli forces carried out more than 30 strikes on Thursday, including the so-called humanitarian zone of Al-Mawasi and northern Gaza's Jabalia refugee camp, Gaza's government media office said. The Israeli airstrikes targeted civilians and infrastructure in horrific crimes added to the occupation's dark record, the media office said in a statement. Chief of Gaza's police force Mahmoud Salah and his deputy Hussam Shawan were among 12 people killed in a strike on a tent encampment in Al-Mawasi, a coastal area near the southern town of Khan Yunis, medical sources told Al Jazeera. Now, once again, this is just a city of tents, and it's just refugees. It's not people with guns and shooting rockets and stuff like that. This is not some secret Hamas base or something like that. It's just the people that are still alive, the civilians, the men, women, and children that are still alive, being directly targeted by Israel. Salah was a veteran officer who had spent 30 years in the force, serving 6 years as its chief. Gaza's Interior Ministry condemned the killing, saying 2 police officers had been performing their humanitarian and national duty in serving our people. It accused Israel of spreading chaos and deepening the human suffering in Gaza with a deadly strike. And once again, this comes with no warning for the Israeli military, but once again, when Israel does warn people, they say, hey, flee this area, then they bomb that area, they bomb the people fleeing the area, and then they bomb the area that they told people to flee to. So it is a complete ethnic cleansing and genocide when you are, killing indiscriminately civilians, men, women, and children. So, once again, the Israeli military gave no warning for Thursday's pre-dawn attack on Al-Mawasi, which has been hit relentlessly by Israeli warplanes, drones, and artillery. Felipe Lazzarini, head of the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, decried the attack. As the year begins, we got reports of yet another attack on Al-Mawasi with dozens of people killed and injured. Another reminder that there is no humanitarian zone, let alone a safe zone in Gaza. Lazzarini said in a post on X, every day without a ceasefire will bring more tragedy. Israeli forces have repeatedly targeted these so-called safe zones in Gaza, attacking forcibly displaced families who had followed forced evacuation orders. An attack on December 22nd killed 8 people, including 2 children. Earlier that month, on December 3rd, at least 20 people were killed in what Israel's military claimed was the targeting of a Hamas official. After Thursday's attack, Israel's military said it conducted an intelligence-based strike and eliminated Shawan, whom it called the head of Hamas security forces in southern Gaza. It made no mention of Salah's death. Days earlier, Israeli tanks had advanced on al-Mawasi from the southern city of Rafah, forcing dozens of families to flee northward, fearing imminent attack. Prior to the attack on northern Gaza's Jabalia refugee camp, Israeli forces issued orders for all residents to flee 3 targeted areas. The warning was described as pre-anesthesia before the attack by the Israeli military's Arabic language spokesman Avishai Adrei. Once again, terrorist organizations are launching rockets from your area, which has been warned many times in the past, he said in a post on social media. It's just absolutely insane. Meanwhile, there are negotiations, sort of offhand being carried out between Qatar, Egypt, the United States, and Israel, wanting to secure a lasting deal indirectly over the past few months. But of course, nothing has happened, as, each side has sort of said, traded accusations, I would say, back and forth over delaying the agreement. And once again, Israel's increased bombardment of the area. The toll from the first 2 days of 2025 takes the number of deaths in Gaza to more than 46,000 since Israel began its war on the enclave on October 7th, 2023. At least 6 babies have died of cold in the recent days as the forcibly displaced Palestinians across Gaza brave winter rains. Next, I want to tap into a Zeteo article here from Prem Thacker. It's on Cori Bush. And it says here, we tried to stop the bombings, Cori Bush on Democrats' failures, AIPAC, and more. I just want to give you a glimpse into this article here. The two-term Missouri lawmaker tells Prem she's not done in politics as she exits Congress after losing to AIPAC-backed Wesley Bell in the second most expensive House primary in history. Once again, we can see Cori Bush here advocating for a ceasefire in November of 2023 for Gaza. There are 435 members in the U.S. House of Representatives, but in 2 terms, Cori Bush had made more noise than many. In 2020, Bush became the first black woman to represent Missouri in Congress, upsetting 10-term incumbent Lacey Clay. Bush, a pastor and nurse whose activism ascended during the 2014 Ferguson police brutality protests, quickly brought her theory of change to Congress by piercing the bubble of Washington and pressing her colleagues to be on the record on where they stand on crucial issues. Now, hours after rioters stormed the Capitol on January 6th of 2021, Bush introduced a resolution to remove every House member who supported attempts to overturn the election. Months later, Bush slept on the steps of the Capitol as she successfully fought to extend an eviction moratorium amid the COVID pandemic. On October 16, 2023, Bush co-introduced a resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. Now, Bush also stood up for the only Palestinian representative in Congress, and of course, she stood up for the ceasefire. But such noise attracted larger and better-funded opposition. Shortly after Bush co-led the ceasefire resolution, St. Louis prosecutor Wesley Bell announced he would challenge her. His campaign, buoyed by the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, or AIPAC, which is led by a foreign country which tells American politicians how to vote. So it's not us, the people, telling our politicians. It is political action committees like AIPAC and a foreign country meddling in our politics. And you'll see exactly how deep this goes in just this one example. So shortly after Bush co-led that ceasefire resolution, he was buoyed by AIPAC. Crypto interests and more made the House primary the second most expensive in U.S. history. A gargantuan $18.2 million was spent, $15 million of which supported Bell or attacked Bush. All told, Bell, who often attacked Bush as being ineffective in Congress, won by just under 7,000 votes, a very small margin. As she exits Congress, Bush spoke with Zateo about her loss, where she thinks the party is failing, her thoughts on third parties, and what she might do next. They asked her what she was most proud of when she looks back at her time in Congress. She says the eviction moratorium, using activism, even when you don't have institutionalized power, still finding a way to bring about change. So making the decision to camp out on the steps of the U.S. Capitol for those 4 nights and 5 days to push the Biden administration to extend the eviction moratorium when 11 million people were at risk of losing their homes during the daily global pandemic. I'm so proud of that. It feels unprecedented. And also, it was just out of a desire to save lives. And we put one foot in front of the other, and we didn't know how it would turn out, but we were hopeful. They asked if she had any regrets, but she says she doesn't generally operate with regret, but she did say that she really wanted to see a ceasefire in Gaza, and she wanted to be able to save lives in Gaza. Next, I want to take a look at a clip here from the David Pakman Show. It is David stepping in and looking at a woman who was denied health care by United Healthcare while she was in a coma. So let's take a look at this. David Pakman Show, United Healthcare denies claim of woman in a coma.
All right. People are very much right to be furious at what's going on with the health insurance companies.
Right.
What we can say, of course, I don't support vigilantism. Of course, I don't support criminality, murder, homicide, assassinations. Of course, I don't support any of that. That is not a way to fix systems that I have ever seen work in history. And also, I understand why millions, if not tens of millions of Americans are furious at what health insurance companies and the health insurance industrial complex have done to the country and to our ability to get health care that we need at an acceptable quality at an affordable cost.
That's all we're asking.
We are now learning about United Healthcare denying the claim of a woman in a coma. This is a story that has gone viral because of a social media post from Dr. Zachary Levy, who says that he has a patient in a coma and that United Healthcare said, we don't know that what you're asking for is medically necessary. Let's go to the post that he made, the doctor made on Twitter, where he said, quote, United Healthcare just denied a claim of one of my patients in the ICU with a brain hemorrhage, in a coma, on a ventilator, in heart failure, because I haven't proven to them that caring for her in the hospital was, quote, medically necessary. Tear it all down. Dr. Levy went
I will note with that, this is the one time where you want either your person that you've designated to care for you if you're incapacitated, or your insurance company to advocate for you in ways that will save your life. And for United Healthcare to say, you know what? I don't just really think any of this is medically necessary. I think you should just stay in that coma or maybe die because, that way we don't have to pay out any money and we maintain our profit margin.
All down. Dr. Levy went on to say, quote, meanwhile, I've been instructed to write a letter of medical necessity to United Healthcare.
Which is a waste of time when you should be caring for your patient.
I'm writing on behalf of my patient to document the medical necessity of being on a ventilator in the intensive care unit for the treatment of their brain hemorrhage, cerebral edema, and respiratory failure.
And these are things not to delay on.
To prevent them from dying during this visit. Please contact me if you need anything else. We need a quick approval here.
Yeah.
This is the way that it often works. A doctor says, as a doctor with experience doing doctor stuff,
right,
here's what the patient needs. And then in comes an insurance company and says, nah. Now, you might soberly say, it's logical that if a company is going to pay for something, that they would have a process for making sure that they are paying for something that is appropriate.
Right.
Fine. The problem is that the dynamic of this often puts non-doctors on a computer at United Healthcare or Cigna or whoever in a position of saying, I, as a non-doctor, now decide whether the doctor's professional opinion is acceptable to me. What many have found is that when there is such a denial, you say, oh, let me know the name of the doctor who made this decision. They find out it wasn't a doctor at all who actually made the decision. And the fact that this is something people have figured out, that this is a technique sometimes people use to get reversals on these denials, is a sad commentary on the situation that we have. Now, I do want to give you the other side of this whole thing. And this is not a defense. This is just explaining to you sort of like a how we got here. Many of you are familiar with the $50 Tylenol pill in a hospital.
Yeah.
Many of you have written to me and said,
that's absurd.
I got a breakdown of my hospital stay. They charged $50 for a Tylenol pill, which costs, pennies when you go and buy Tylenol at CVS or Duane Reade. An IV bag with
you get like $200
solution.
for like
the hospital
a couple dollars or what have you.
$300 for that. It's $1 wholesale. Now, why is that? Is it just asshole hospitals? Well, not really. And again, this isn't the defense of the hospitals. It's an explanation of how the system feeds on itself and the hospitals react to the health insurance companies.
Right.
The health insurance companies then react to the hospitals. When you see
It's
a
the
$20
system
Band-Aid,
that's
it
broken.
reflects not just the cost of the Band-Aid, but it reflects the cost for the billing staff that hospitals have, the medical coders that are required for the hospital to get paid by the health insurance company, compliance with the insurance requirements, the computer and software systems required to interface with the health insurance companies. In a sense, the hospitals charge higher prices to compensate for patients who can't pay their bills. So the fact that there are uninsured people, thanks to our system, or people who will come in and get treatment and never pay, the people who have the health insurance are charged more to compensate for that. Because hospitals know that they will negotiate with insurers, they will often set very high, what might be called retail MSRP charge master prices.
Yikes.
So that then they have room to negotiate with the insurance companies. You know, I told the appendectomy
Insurance companies don't
that
provide
shook
anything.
the world. Years ago, I had appendicitis and I had an appendectomy, and we looked at my bill with the audience at the time, and it was like $35,000 or something,
which is
like
absurd.
that. And indeed, there were
It's such a
charges in
regular
there. You know,
process that has to happen.
The crackers they gave me in the recovery room were on there, and the one anti-nausea pill that they gave me, it was $70 or all this stuff. But it didn't really matter in the sense that what the hospital was ultimately paid for was what was left of my $2,000 deductible, right? Which I think was like $1,100 at that point in the year, plus a pre-negotiated rate with my insurance company. I think it was like $9,000 or something like that. So they prop up the bill with, we gave him crackers and we gave him this and we gave him that and we dosed him with this other thing. It's $37,000.
Yikes.
It's already been pre-negotiated. Oh, we've agreed to accept the $9,000 or something like that. And this is all part of it. We also have lack of transparency. Nobody told me in advance appendectomies are $35,000 or your insurance company
how would
pays
you
us
know?
$9,000.
It's just like a made-up figure.
It just doesn't happen.
That could
And of course,
change
in
based on the
emergency
patient.
situation, who can shop around anyway, right? That's another broken part of the
Yeah,
system.
you can't shop around
So
in an emergency.
all of these are reasons why these systems
especially if
feed
your
and feed and feed on
your network
themselves,
is very small.
and people have a right to be angry. My monthly health insurance premium in 2023 was $707 a month. This year, that same plan went up to $743 a month. I recently had labs done. The labs were billed at $600. My insurance only pays $300. So even though I'm paying my $700 a month in premium, I still
Which
have
is
to dump
absurd.
in
That's like
another $300
that could be half
for
someone's
my
rent
labs.
or more.
I still have copays of
It could be-
$30 at my doctor.
be a
and
major
$60
chunk
at
of your
specialist.
rent just
so
to
what I'm
health
going to do
insurance.
is look at getting a super high deductible
Which if you're healthy,
plan,
you
maybe
might
a
not really
catastrophic
need.
plan. Maybe instead of $740 a month,
A
it'll
catastrophic
cost me
plan
$200 a month.
is cheaper.
Everything will be out of pocket for like the first $5,000.
Right.
I've got to
But
meet
that's
that
only
deductible,
for a year,
and
so
then
you'd
my
have to
insurance
spend
will
that
pay
much
for
within a
everything.
year
That's another possibility.
before
But
they would
the
cover
fact that
everything.
this is the way it all works is a broken system.
Indeed.
So people have a right to be angry. What's going on is absolutely outrageous. I hate to break it to you. Trump's not going to solve this. Trump's promise for a beautiful healthcare plan, it's a 10-year promise.
has-
now. Back in
yeah.
2015, he started saying, we'll replace Obamacare.
Him and the Republicans
Obamacare
have
was
said that
5
they're
years
going to
old then.
dismantle Obamacare and
It's now
replace
15
it with
years old.
something better.
Trump's not going to do it.
Never
So
done it.
if we are going to solve this problem, oh, sure, it'd be great to just have a president that will solve it. Well, it's going
Or
to
a
be 4 years.
Congress.
The way to solve this now is for some state or group of states to do what Vermont planned to do
Sure.
and ultimately was not able to do, which
Yeah.
is a state single payer system. That I am increasingly convinced, especially when we're going to have 4 years of Trumpism, that is going to be the path to creating a model and saying, look, they were able to do it. Vermont, due to its rural nature and the way they were planning to fund it and a bunch of other details, it didn't work out. There are many other states that are considered good candidates for this. Washington is one that's often mentioned because it has more of a blend of urban and rural. You need some density, more densely populated areas in order to have a risk pool. that more appropriately represents a sort of a normal distribution of outcomes. There's a whole bunch of other factors, right? But Washington's being talked about as a possible place. Connecticut is an interesting one. Geographically, it's smaller. Of course, you could say, well, David, Rhode Island's even smaller. Yes, but Connecticut is better off financially,
Right.
and a larger total GDP. So Connecticut may be an ideal place to test something like this. Of course, Massachusetts is often mentioned in this as well. So that is where I think we are going to see the start of something like this, especially when Trump is president. People are right to be angry.
I think he's got a good point
quick
there.
Break. We
Definitely check out David Pakman Show. You can find it on YouTube, The David Pakman Show. You can sign up for a membership on his website, get access to the bonus show, all that stuff. I think he did excellent coverage here, and he was able to sort of break this down in a way that even if you're not super educated about the health insurance industry or even with political issues, he is definitely gifted in the way that he can sort of break this stuff down to the regular person. Now, I want to read some of the comments here. Stephen Law said, United Healthcare denied surgery for my wife to have a cancerous tumor removed. Luckily for her, the hospital performed the surgery anyway to save her life and went after United Healthcare afterward. She's been doing fantastic 8 years later. United Healthcare would rather have you die to save them money. Kodiak's Music says, just because the murder weapon is paperwork doesn't mean it isn't murder. Sam Kitty here has sort of a story here. I was visiting a Scandinavian country 2 years ago as a tourist. I fell ill a few days before my scheduled departure, and I took a cab to the ER. I had high fever, I was vomiting, everything was spinning. They started to work on me immediately. They did blood work, urine analysis, scans, etc. When I was better, they asked me about my insurance. The next day, after taking medicine and a few bottles of IV, I felt good enough to leave. They told me they were able to contact my insurance back in or unable to contact my insurance back in the USA. I asked to see the bill. It was $67. That's it for everything. I paid on the spot and felt extreme anger and disgust towards the USA and the way it's governed. Someone also says, the system isn't broken, David. It's working exactly the way it was intended, and that is the problem. I don't think a class action lawsuit against United Healthcare, I don't think that's enough to put a dent. That would just take away a few millions of their profits when they're probably a billion-dollar company. And also, another commenter says, my friend is a pharmacist and has told me that he will usually send a claim, it will be rejected, he'll send the same thing 10 minutes later, and it will be approved because according to him, they always reject the first claim. That's how insurance industries are built, and they're not exactly providing a product or a service. It is just the fact that they created the need for them to exist. So by hiking prices of medical care and rates for coverage and stuff, the need for an insurance company to come in and help you pay for such things and also charge you an exorbitant amount and not cover certain things allows them to make a really nice profit off this industry. All right, so moving on, an update on Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya's status. He was the doctor, the director of Kamal Adwan Hospital, and he is being held in the detention center here, which looks an awful lot like a concentration camp, I would say here. If we take a look at in more closer detail here, the Israeli army is holding this director captive. He is expected to be brought to a hearing regarding his detention. Army spokesperson says Hussam Abu Safiya is under investigation by Shin Bet on suspicion of links to Hamas. Once again, his detention has been extended to February 13th, and it keeps being extended. And it says here Israeli authorities have extended the ban on his access to legal counsel until 22nd of January 2025, marking the second such extension since his abduction. which, is very strange. In Israel, Palestinians and just people in general don't really get access to a lawyer immediately. They can hold you without charges, unlike in the United States. They have to sort of, within 24 to 48 hours, based on where you're at, they have to produce a reason for why you're being held, what are the charges, was the evidence, was the probable cause, have they read you your rights, things like that are protocols that have to go through. Well, in Israel, it is a completely different story. So, continuing onward, I want to take a look at this. This is a video here.
Let's assume that Hamas...
Let me pull this up here. All right.
has a base. Let's assume that Hamas has a base under a hospital with missiles. Let's assume that Hamas is the devil. Never mind Hamas. The devil is there.
I see.
Does it justify harming a child?
No.
Does it justify harming a child? Does it justify killing a civilian?
Nope.
This is where you draw
Easy
the line.
answers.
Somebody talked here about red lines.
Mm-hmm.
And this speaks to the young lady that spoke here just a minute ago. It's a question of values.
Mm-hmm.
If it means harming the hair on the head of a child, you do not do it. That's it.
That's the difference between war crimes and, actual
That is
protection of the civilian population during a war.
That is the difference between the two sides. They say, kill the child, kill 1,000 children, kill 100,000 children. We say, you do not harm a child. That's the difference.
Right.
That's what this is about. And that leads us to the next step in this argument. Terrorism. What is terrorism? What is heroism? How do we define them? I'm often asked, as many of my colleagues here, do you condemn the Palestinians? Do you condemn the Palestinians? And I'm sure many of you have had these conversations.
Palestinians are people,
Or at least heard these conversations.
not
Do
an
you
organization.
condemn the Palestinians in Gaza? The Gaza Strip is a concentration camp that was created by the Zionists
Yeah.
almost as soon as the Zionist apartheid state was established. It was created by them as a concentration camp into which they herded hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from the southern part of Palestine as the ethnic cleansing campaign was going along. It's a concentration camp. Palestinians have been living in that concentration camp for more than 7 decades. The vast majority of Palestinian resistance to the apartheid, to the ethnic cleansing, to the massacres, to the killing, has been unarmed.
I think it's also fair to say, like, what is a fair resistance? If a people is being attacked and they are yearning to be free and to fight against genocide and apartheid and occupation, and they want to fight for their right as a people, as a country, as everything, we would give that right to America, for example. When we were fighting against the British in our Revolutionary War, we would say, oh, of course it's justified for America to fight back against their oppressor, taxation without representation, everything that pours into it about American history. So what right do the Palestinians have? I would ask you that. Moving forward, we have a video here from Abia Khatib. She posts a lot on Twitter. This is about Zionists having zero empathy or respect for human life outside of their own ethnic group and ideology. It's really disgusting, but I think we do have to take a look at this. We owe it to ourselves to look at this here. All right.
Indeed, in 2007, a research paper that won the Hebrew University of Jerusalem's Teacher Prize Award made the surprising claim that cases of Israeli occupational forces raping Palestinian women in the occupied territories was very rare and low. The paper's author, Tal Nitzan, argued that the lack of rape was a political decision in order to reinforce ethnic boundaries between Israelis and Palestinians. Soldiers, it argued, saw Palestinians as too dehumanized to be considered for rape and feared that offspring produced from the sexual violence would contribute to a growing Palestinian demographic.
So they were worried that potentially by raping Palestinian women, that the babies born of said rape would be, Palestinian rebel forces at a certain point. Once you grow up and you learn about your upbringing and you learn about the suffering of your people, that you would once again become a part of a rebelling force. And very true. I mean, they create the martyrs that bring about rebellion by, killing and ethnic cleansing
Israeli
of
forces were too racist to rape Palestinian women.
Let's hear that again.
Were too racist. In other words, Israeli forces were too racist to rape Palestinian women.
That is insane to me. Too racist to rape. Not that we want rape to happen, but it's, just trying to comprehend the way Zionists think and the way that they have zero empathy or any respect for human life outside of their own ethnic group and ideology. And that includes Americans, that includes Christians. In Zionism, there is only room for one people, and they believe that they are God's chosen people and that they can take this land by any means necessary and that they can bring about their version of the end times and exclude everyone else from it. I've never seen a religion that operates quite like that. I want to jump into this video. This is Hassan Piker, and in early December, he had Ta-Nehisi Coates on his Twitch stream, and he talked about his experience on the West Bank. So I actually want to pull this up for you here. So this is Ta-Nehisi Coates on Hassan Piker's Twitch stream, answering questions about his experience in the West Bank.
Constant surveillance state, without constant violence, without checkpoints, things that you saw. It only took you maybe not even 10 days. I assume it took you just one day to immediately recognize what was going on. Could you talk a little bit about your experience in Hebron specifically and just in the West Bank as well that caused you to fully realize what was going on?
First of all, Hebron is very poor. Let me clarify that. Palestinians who live in the old city of Hebron are very poor. They're very poor because their shops and markets have been completely shut down, because every step that they take is patrolled and they have to navigate a series of checkpoints and, security. I watched a soldier with a huge automatic rifle turn back.
I've seen this too, actually, when I've been to the West Bank.
Surveillance is not true of everyone who lives in the old city of Hebron. It's true of Palestinians who live in the old city of Hebron. For somebody who was reared on stories of Jim Crow, who came up under that as a collective experience, as an African American, first of all, you drive to Hebron. We were coming from East Jerusalem to get there, and there are separate roads delineated for citizens of Israel and Jewish settlers of the West Bank. Those roads are not the same quality, are not the same, efficiency. We are driving past homes in which you can clearly see the difference between a settlement and where Palestinians live. Everything down to the very water that they drink and bathe with is segregated, and the apportionment that they get is very different. We have more rights to navigate on the street than people who live there, than people whose parents live there, than people whose grandparents and great-grandparents live there. I've told the story, several times.
The indigenous people, the Palestinians.
About the age of my son, who demanded that I tell him my religion in order to be let pass. And this is actually more complicated and more sinister than it sounds, because I got to the point where my grandmother was a Christian and he let me pass. But had I had an Arabic name, had I had an Arabic look about me, or had I been, Palestinian, I wouldn't have got
Muslim.
For instance, why a Palestinian Christian? My religion would not matter. See, this is when you start buttressing up against the racism and understand that even though somebody's asking a question about religion, they really aren't asking, do you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior? That's not what they're asking. You don't need a degree in Middle East studies. You don't need, to be fluent in Arabic and Hebrew to understand what's going on. It's that clear.
It's not a complicated issue. It's really not. It's very, very simple. I really appreciate Hassan for having that discussion with Ta-Nehisi Coates and bringing his experience to light further, because Coates was formerly, a supporter of Israel. He took what knowledge he was able to see from the surface, but of course, when he went there, it was a total different experience. I want to take a look at this. This is from Channel 4 News. Children are freezing to death because they don't have enough shelter items. This is from Louise Wateridge, senior emergency officer at UNRWA, who was just returned from Gaza.
A few days and weeks ago, the people were being crushed to death waiting for food, for flour, and children have now started freezing to death because they don't have enough shelter items. This is the situation with UNRWA on the ground. This is the situation with the largest humanitarian organization doing everything they can with the rest of the United Nations.
Can anyone take over?
No.
Right.
It's
no one
as
can do
simple as
that.
that. And
Okay.
you can't imagine,
Yeah, and they got rid of
this
UNRWA.
bad now, how awful will it be in
won't let
a
'em
few
in.
weeks or in a few months if they cease to operate working with UNRWA?
Is this genocide?
Yep.
I'm not a legal expert. That's not for me to be able to say, but I can tell you what I see. We see children being killed every day. We see people
Check.
without food. We see
Check.
people without access to clean water on a
Check.
daily basis. Disease is spreading.
Check.
We saw polio return. That
Check.
was eradicated after 25 years. It's endless. The horrors are endless.
I have to put to you what the Israelis say to us, which is that Hamas is using hospitals as shelter. Have you seen, or do you have any evidence that that is the case?
We have heard these accusations continuously throughout the war, that schools and hospitals are being used
In churches,
by-
right?
for military
Oh,
reasons.
yeah.
We don't have the evidence of this. We have the accusations. What we
No
do
evidence.
know and what we are certain of is that children and families are
No
sheltering in
tunnels,
these
no
facilities.
secret
We
armory.
do know that patients are going to these hospitals for treatment, that doctors are being detained, that doctors are being
Like
killed
Hussam
while
Abu
they are
Safiya,
working.
yeah.
And that is against international humanitarian law.
Indeed
and
it
Israel
is.
is saying, or at least indicating, that they could in some way start shifting aid into the Strip to where it's needed. Does that sound in any way credible to you?
No.
Why?
It does not. It's a complete
haven't done it.
risk to the population on top of what they're already facing. It would be unacceptable for anyone but the humanitarians on the ground. They're a party of the conflict. We cannot have a party of the conflict responsible for the humanitarian response for 2 million people.
Yep.
Women, children, they're dying every day now because they don't have the simple items that they need, the medicine, the food, the shelter. This
Right.
needs to be run by the United Nations. This is the responsibility
A
and the
third
mandate
party.
of the
Yep.
international community. And that is what we need to continue to be allowed to do. When I left
Absolutely crazy. Next, in the league of, sort of war crimes that we have, this ambulance is hiding a group of armed Israeli soldiers here. And this is in Nablus in the occupied West Bank. Israel's military used the vehicle in a surprise raid in the West Bank, which is occupied. And of course, you can see Israeli troopers stepping out there. 2 Palestinians were killed in a raid on Balata refugee camp in Nablus. People could be seen fleeing for their lives as the raid began. So once again, this is a war crime. Using the ambulance is a flagrant violation of Geneva Conventions that protect civilians in armed conflicts. So United States never does this. Other countries, the UK, Canada, what have you, we don't go around masquerading in ambulances so we can get close to an area and then, load out in full battle gear. Israel has regularly accused Palestinian groups of using medical facilities, churches, and schools as a cover. But as we know with Israel, every accusation is actually a confession. So yeah, you can see them storming the streets. They've been criticized for failing to provide proper evidence. Yep. Evidence for what? I want to take a look at this. This is a TikTok from Lucas Febraro, and he is talking about Israeli soldiers. Lucas here is talking about Israeli soldiers that are finding out the hard way that their war crimes are going to get them in trouble if they travel to any other country.
The hard way that when you're a war criminal, going on a holiday abroad may not be the most straightforward thing in the world. A few days ago, the Hind Rajab Foundation brought a case in Brazil against an Israeli soldier who was vacationing in the country, arguing that evidence showed that he had participated in massive demolitions of civilian homes in Gaza during a systematic campaign of destruction. This forced the Israeli embassy to quickly evacuate the soldier to Argentina, something that does not bring to mind any historical precedent.
You know what? That was the Nazis that did that. They actually, a lot of them fled Germany to Argentina and other countries in South America to be able to, continue or avoid any sort of consequences for their actions.
You can look up genocidal war criminal Argentina escape if you don't believe me.
Yeah,
Similar attempts to arrest and prosecute Israeli soldiers have been made in other countries as well, which led the Israeli army to warn soldiers about the risk of arrest when traveling abroad. It has also led to the publication of the surreal guide in Israeli media for soldiers who are about to travel. Here are some of the things they are told to do. Stop being an idiot and posting your war crimes on social media. Also, delete minor content like racist songs that could be horribly misinterpreted as incitement to genocide. Be careful about traveling to countries that care about the application of international law and human rights. Remember that
only
it's
travel to America and Germany
once human rights organizations and foreign press are allowed into Gaza. Note that the Israeli government may not pay for your defense since there may simply be too many cases to fund. We can only hope. And also thank the tireless activists working around the clock and around the world to make sure that the only places war criminals get to visit in their countries are the insides of courtrooms and prison cells.
Well said. I really appreciate the message. Now, diving further into what's going on in the West Bank, we have Israeli settlers have been destroying Palestinian property in the West Bank. This is in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank, 6th of January, 2025. Yeah, you can see homes on fire. Following the killing of 3 Israelis near the illegal settlement in Qatilia, settlers were seen in one Palestinian village under the protection of Israeli forces. 4 buildings and vehicles were set on fire in several areas. There's been a surge in settler attacks in recent months. And this is what they do. Settlers and the IDF team up to do this. Israel continues a decades-long occupation of Palestinian land that's both in Gaza and the West Bank. But yeah, settlers are able to do this. The Israeli military says it's begun a search to find the 3 settlers' killers. And in the meantime, it seems like everyone else has to pay. As they just burn down random homes and vehicles and stuff like that. So, I mean, that's the reality for even living in the West Bank, where there is no Hamas presence, there is no insurgency and bombings and stuff like that. It is only the occupations and war crimes of Israeli citizens, settlers, and the IDF. Moving on, we have a report here from Doctors Without Borders about what is happening in Gaza.
People in Gaza are struggling to survive apocalyptic conditions. Nowhere is safe, no one is spared, and there is no exit from this shattered enclave. In our new report, Gaza, Life in a Death Trap, MSF exposes Israel's campaign of attacks, siege, and blockade, which is destroying conditions of life in Gaza. This has continued relentlessly in response to the horrific attacks carried out by Hamas in Israel on October the 7th, 2023. The situation in northern Gaza is especially dire. It's a stark illustration of the brutal war Israeli forces are waging on Gaza. We are seeing clear signs of ethnic cleansing in the north as Palestinians are forcibly displaced, trapped and bombed. What our medical teams have witnessed on the ground throughout this conflict is consistent with the descriptions provided by an increasing number of legal experts and organizations concluding that genocide is taking place in Gaza. While we don't have legal authority to establish intentionality, the signs and the ongoing devastation, including mass killings, severe physical and mental health injuries, forced displacement and impossible conditions of life for Palestinians under siege and bombardment are undeniable. MSF repeats its call for an immediate and sustained ceasefire. The total destruction of Palestinian life in Gaza must stop. Israel must end its siege on Gaza, allow immediate and safe access to the north, and open vital land crossings, including the Rafah crossing, to allow a massive scale-up of medical and humanitarian aid.
And once again, that's MSF Secretary General Christopher Lockyer breaking down the report, Gaza Life in a Death Trap. And this is from Doctors Without Borders. So listen, as every single international agency tells you that genocide and ethnic cleansing is happening, it's interesting to watch people try to mold themselves into pretzels denying that. Now, we have been following a TikTok account, Andre X, who has been making a documentary in the West Bank. Let's take a look at some of the footage he has here. So yeah, this is a documentary in the West Bank of what is happening over there.
About once every 3 days, it contains 12 cubic meters of water, and it costs around 200 shekels. The same amount of water costs the settlers 18 shekels. We're in the Area C of the West Bank.
So Palestinians are charged more for water than the Jewish settlers.
And there is a water pipe just a few meters away from the village that serves the settlement up on that hill. But of course, the occupation forbids the villagers from getting water here, forcing them to pay more than 10 times the price that the settlers pay. And of course, it's not just about the money. The occupation systematically blocks roads that the Palestinians use to get to water. It forbids Palestinians from getting water from natural water sources.
Once again, it's marked there. The modern-day swastika.
This is the 2009 military order that designated rain as Israeli property and banned Palestinians from collecting it without permission. The water apartheid is a systematic effort to deprive the Palestinians from the most vital natural resource in order to further the ethnic cleansing of the West Bank.
Once again, links to their documentary there, and continuing.
The settlers set up a Star of David over the Ojah Spring in the West Bank in order to claim
they distorted that symbol to be for the modern-day swastika.
As possible. And it doesn't stop there, of course. The same settlers that set up the Star of David and who painted the water slides invade the local Palestinian village every single day. Today we had 2 settler invasions and 1 police invasion. A settler threw stones at a Palestinian car just a few hundred meters away from here. And a couple of days ago, a settler threw a stone at a school bus driving children to school and broke its window.
Why would sane, rational people do that?
A sign into a symbol of oppression, violence,
Once again,
and ethnic supremacy.
The Star of David is a religious sign.
Into a symbol of oppression, violence, and ethnic supremacy. Funnily enough, the Star of David was used by Jews and Muslims alike as a religious symbol for centuries, and it only became a symbol of Judaism in the 17th century, and became the symbol of Judaism in the 19th century. And now in the West Bank, it's used by the religious Zionists to intimidate Palestinians and invade houses and draw it as a graffiti everywhere. Now in the West Bank, the only thing that it represents is the violence enacted by the Zionist movement upon the Palestinians here.
Once again, I'd say it's the modern-day swastika. It has been distorted and used for evil in order to further genocide and ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. Moving on, we have interesting development from Ireland here, as Ireland is joining South Africa's genocide case against Israel at the World Court. December 2023, South Africa filed a case at the International Court of Justice, or the ICJ, accusing Israel of violating the Genocide Convention in Gaza. A month later, the ICJ ordered Israel to take action to prevent acts of genocide in Gaza and to ensure the delivery of humanitarian aid. More than 10 countries have requested to join South Africa's case. They include Ireland, Mexico, Turkey, Egypt, Chile, Spain, the Maldives, and Colombia. Ireland has a history of supporting Palestinians tied to its own colonial past. Around 100 years ago, both the Irish and the Palestinians were under British control. So Ireland has also requested to join the Gambia's case against Myanmar. In 2019, the Gambia accused Myanmar of committing genocide against the Rohingya people. So, interesting connection there. Now, we have to talk more about this. This is an Israeli commander shot and killed a Palestinian man after he was used as a human shield in Gaza. Using human shields is a war crime. And as the IDF says, they always say Hamas uses human shields. And it's like, well, every accusation is actually a confession for Israel. Israeli soldiers forced the detained Palestinian man to search buildings near Khan Yunis for potential explosives ahead of Israeli troops. When their commander arrived, he shot the man for being Palestinian, not knowing he was part of their operation. Israel's use of Palestinians, including children, as human shields is systematic and well documented. It calls the practice the mosquito protocol. Those Palestinians are being used as human shields to sweep tunnels and also houses. In some cases, they have a GoPro camera on their chest or on their head, and in almost all of the cases, they are cuffed before they are taken into a tunnel or house to sweep, and they are dressed in an IDF uniform. That way, you know, if Hamas were there, they would shoot them because they would think they were IDF. Nadav Wayman says, former Israeli sniper executive director in Breaking the Silence. The Israeli military confirmed the killing and did not deny its use of Palestinians as human shields in Gaza. Once again, they're touting their war crimes, and the world seems to be just silent. Israeli forces often refer to Palestinians used as human shields as shawish, a term in Arabic for sergeant. Very odd. From what we understand, it was a very widely used protocol, meaning there are hundreds of Palestinians in Gaza who have been used as human shields. And once again, that's Nadav Wayman again. I tried to resist their proposal, but they started beating me. An officer told me it was not my choice to make and that I have to do whatever they want. Ramaz al-Shafi says, a released Palestinian detainee who spoke to The Guardian. The Israeli soldiers put a GPS tracker on my hand and told me, if you try to run away, we will shoot you. We will know where you are. Abu Saeed says, another Palestinian detainee. It's absolutely insane to me that, you know, Israel claims that Hamas uses human shields when actually it's them. Moving on, we have yet another dystopian story here where a Palestinian music teacher turns an Israeli drone's sounds into music. That's a C. He's teaching them pitch recognition. It's absolutely dystopian to me. It's absolutely insane that, I mean, you would be teaching under those circumstances. All right, a few more things. Hundreds of medical workers in North America took sick leave because they're sick from the genocide in Gaza.
We are haunted by images of mutilated and burning bodies.
We are not meant to see babies buried under rubble.
Our capacity to facilitate healing from this sickness for ourselves and our patients is limited when the root cause of the suffering, genocide, continues unabated.
We humans are not designed to see each other being obliterated this way. And our neurobiology just cannot take it anymore. We are sick from genocide, and we felt that we need to take an action.
Healthcare workers in 15 U.S. and Canadian cities took off work to participate in January 6th. Doctors in 3 U.S. cities inaugurated Kamal Adwan free clinics. They're named for northern Gaza's last functioning hospital, which Israel burned down in December, which we covered that here on the channel, 2024. Israeli soldiers forcibly marched half-dressed patients and staff out of the hospital in the cold, and we know that they stripped them and searched them and beat them and tortured them. The hospital's director, Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya, was abducted by Israeli soldiers. He's still being held without cause and without lawyers and representation.
So the first demand is very personal to us as a medical community, to free Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya and our colleagues who are incarcerated in Israeli detention, concentration, horror camps. My family is in Palestine. I'm a Palestinian American. The only cure for my feeling of helplessness and the psychological trauma that I'm experiencing is to actually organize effectively to end this genocide. As a medical community, we swear an oath to protect life. And we are seeing our mission in life being decimated in front of our eyes. We're seeing our colleagues unable to even survive because quadcopters are catching them everywhere and killing them.
Drones, yeah. And there's a drone dropping the bomb on Kamal Adwan Hospital. We covered that on the channel as well. They've imprisoned more than 450 since October 2023.
All over the world is to join us in being human, to join us in advocating for our colleagues who need us now more than any other time.
Indeed.
Now is the time for all of us to take a stand together, collectively, and respect our humanity together.
Well said. You can also, spread information about Palestine. You can also boycott. You can go to bdsmovement.net for more information on that. Next, we have a report here on what Joe Biden is doing for Israel and Palestine in his final days in office. Let's take a look here.
Biden's final acts before leaving office has been to notify Congress of a planned $8 billion arms sale to Israel, according to
Absolutely
recent
insane.
The weapon sale.
So he's already done a $6 billion and a $20 billion, but now,
and Israel has
once
been
again,
on
even
Gaza.
more.
Artillery shells, precision-guided munitions, missiles for jets, attack helicopters, 500-pound warheads, along with other munitions would be included in this deal. Part of the
further fund the genocide and occupation of Palestinians.
Still, the majority would be delivered in coming
Be on the
months
wrong
and years,
side of history.
despite the Biden administration only having another 2 weeks in office. This planned arms sale came during a week of non-stop Israeli airstrikes and intense shelling of the Gaza Strip, which claimed the lives of over 150 Palestinians in just the first few days of 2025. The US has continued to deliver weapons to Israel as Israel faces charges of genocide at the International Court of Justice for its deadly bombardment and destruction of Gaza with the use of American weapons, and as arrest warrants were issued by the International Criminal Court for Israel's senior political leadership figures, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, for war crimes committed in Gaza. Critics have warned that the continued US military support to Israel would make the US complicit in war crimes committed on Gaza and against its population. One of the latest US
I think all those Blinken, Biden, they should all be in prison for war crimes, along with Netanyahu and Gallant and all the rest of the cronies in Israel.
Weapons, munitions, and
hate to say it, but you're complicit at a certain point.
In May 2024, Biden briefly paused the supply of a single shipment of 2,000-pound bombs to Israel, which Biden was publicly blasted for by both Republicans and Netanyahu himself. These so-called dumb bombs are US-made unguided large explosives which have been used by Israel on densely populated civilian areas in Gaza, leading to widespread destruction and high casualty rates from a single strike,
a weapon that the US no longer uses due to its lack of precision and large collateral damage.
So they want weapons that do more collateral damage, and they were mad about it because Biden withheld it.
Place to achieve a ceasefire deal in Gaza between Israel and Hamas, with Blinken announcing that President Biden wants a ceasefire achieved in the final 2 weeks of his presidency. In 2024, the US vetoed 4 UN Security Council resolutions.
So they don't want a ceasefire,
while simultaneously continuing to arm its closest ally, Israel, spending over $22 billion supporting Israel's military since October 2023. Weapons which Israel has used
all our
to kill
tax-paying
over
dollars.
45,000 people and destroy most
45,000
of Gaza's
people
buildings and infrastructure. These
and
are just
Gaza.
some of the actions
Nothing but
and
rubble.
policies that the Biden administration
Thanks to these
will be
two.
remembered for.
Disgraceful. Not what I would consider something that a Catholic man would do. That's the most anti-Christian thing I can think of. All right. Moving into the last few topics of our show, I want to pull this up because we talked about the Palestinian Authority earlier on in the show, and I actually found a video that really explains it really well for you all. So let's take a look at that together.
Authority? We've got answers. What is the Palestinian Authority? For starters, the Palestinian Authority is a governing body that has some administrative and security control over Palestinians living in some parts of the occupied West Bank. That means the PA does things like run the West Bank's healthcare and education and sanitation systems.
But all that is controlled by Israel.
Police forces. But more on that later.
Yep.
It's important to remember that the PA isn't a political party.
Nope.
It's a government structure.
And it's not a free government separate from Israel.
The PA was created in 1994 as a temporary structure during the Oslo Accords. They were the
Temporary. It's been around
between
for
the Palestine Liberation Organization
like 30
and the
years.
State of Israel. The end goal was supposed to be a two-state solution, but Israel refused to allow a Palestinian state.
That's right.
And instead kept building and
There's your
expanding
illegal settlements.
on occupied Palestinian land. And that meant the PA ended up without any real power to challenge Israel's policies or its occupation of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Today, the PA enjoys little support among the people it's meant to govern. In fact, one poll from early 2023
because they don't
found
help.
that 63% of respondents in the West Bank and Gaza saw the Palestinian Authority as a burden on Palestinians. And Palestinians
It's another
have,
form
at
of
times,
occupation.
protested against PA rule. Why doesn't the Palestinian Authority also control Gaza? Well, the Palestinian Authority was created to administer both the West Bank and Gaza Strip. And that control lasted until 2006, when Fatah lost that year's Palestinian elections to Hamas.
Now, I would say here that a lot of people use this as, well, the people voted for Hamas, so they deserve the genocide and the killing that they're getting in Gaza. Well, that's not exactly true. Most of the people that voted for that, are, much older now, and the people that were kids then that are adults now are facing that decision that was made, 20 years ago. So it's not that everyone chose this that's alive now and they're responsible for what started in 2023 up until now.
Which won around 30,000 more votes across both the West Bank and Gaza Strip. Fatah tried to
And they want something different. They want a rebellion. They've seen the Palestinian Authority is not helpful.
And managed to maintain control of
So it's not that Hamas is good.
Splitting the two territories
It's that
apart.
it's the only other option.
Presidential elections haven't even been held since 2005. PA President Mahmoud Abbas is still
No
in
elections
power,
since then.
even though his term officially ended in 2009.
Oh, good.
Over the next several years, divisions between the two parties, Fatah and Hamas, just grew deeper. And deals to reunite Gaza and the West Bank have fallen through repeatedly. As recently as December 2024, Hamas actually called for Palestinians to mobilize against the PA. This came after the PA's paramilitary police force imposed siege tactics on Palestinian resistance groups in Jenin.
See, the PA is not their friend either.
And that crackdown is part of the PA's long-standing reality of, quote, security coordination with Israel. What's the Palestinian Authority's relationship
Basically,
with Israel?
the right arm of Israel.
Even messier. Because the PA might appear to be a government with a president and ministries and security forces.
Nope.
But it doesn't have much power to act independently.
There you go.
Because here's the kicker. Despite the presence of the PA, it's actually Israel that wields the real power on the ground. Israel controls border access to the shrinking pieces of land the PA is supposed to control, as well as resources like water.
And power.
Israel even controls taxation
Internet.
of West Bank Palestinians, meaning it can easily freeze the PA's revenue whenever it wants. This dependence restricts the PA's ability to act against Israel. West Bank residents have for months.
That's why some people might have chosen Hamas, you know,
suppress resistance to Israel, but
because there was no better option
to protect Palestinians
at the time
from land grabs and attacks by Israeli soldiers and settlers.
Yep.
Remember, the PA was supposed to become the foundation of an independent Palestinian state. But Israel has always prevented the emergence of such a state, and its leaders have long made clear that they have no intention of ever allowing it. And if you've got more questions about Palestine and Israel that you want us to answer, let us know in the comments.
Yikes. So a little bit of information there on what the Palestinian Authority is. Next, I want to just kind of dive into a game that is being made, a video game being made once again by, this is Dreams on a Pillow, developer on the challenges of making games from the West Bank. Crowdfunding success aims to tell the story of the 1948 ethnic cleansing. This is by developer Rashid Abu-Ide, and he's talking about here, he says, I sometimes joke about it, but it's like I need a war to start a new game. And this is Nick Rubin reporting, staff writer for Rock, Paper, Shotgun. Rashid previously made a game called Layla and the Shadows of War, which is about the attacks on Gaza in 2014, and the reason he wanted to make Dreams on a Pillow is because of the attacks in 2023. So Dreams on a Pillow is going to be a stealth adventure game that tells the story of a young mother during the Nakba, which is the 1948 ethnic cleansing, displacement, and cultural suppression of Palestinian Arabs by Israel. And of course, he's doing this through a funding campaign. And this is a game that is about a land full of people being made into a people without land. The campaign still has a few days left to go, but surpassed its initial goal earlier this week. Abu-Ide says the reaction has been overwhelming. I know people care, he says, but he never expected so much support and so many kind words. The funding launched with the acknowledgement that he'd need more than twice the goal to fully pay for salaries, outsourcing, and asset creation. But this does mean he and a small team of artists, calligraphers, and coders can begin production. He says, we needed talented people who believed in the project. That's like the basic requirement for something like this, because it's not a normal project. You need people that believe in our cause. While the team and he prepare to move on from pre-production, I ask what his day-to-day currently looks like from his home in the West Bank. And this is what I find additionally important about this story. He says it's very hard, daily life. Just taking your kids to the school is a big deal because you don't know which road you should take. You don't know where the checkpoints are and if they're going to block roads today or not. On a daily basis, there are multiple attacks in different villages and cities by the soldiers or by the settlers, burning houses, cutting trees, burning trees, destroying the main roads. So it's kind of the daily hustle that we live in. So compare that to your commute. Absolutely insane. We're seeing the increasing speed of the settlements growing around us and taking more land, he continues, occupying more of our land and making into settlements. So it's kind of not safe at all just to move around. There were always attacks or things like that in the main cities. Sometimes you can just be in a road and you can see an ambulance, but somehow this ambulance turns into special Israeli forces sneaking into your city, which once again, as we said earlier, that is a war crime. That is against the Geneva Convention to disguise military forces inside of an ambulance. But somehow this ambulance turns into special Israeli forces sneaking into your city, kidnapping someone or assassinating someone. So it's like terrible. It's terrible, actually. On the oral folktale, that Dreams on a Pillow is based on is widely known in Palestine. I knew it from a young age. People usually use it to show how the Nakba was a terrible event. There are many stories about the Nakba in Palestine, but I think this story by itself captured the emotions that I want. It shows actually the suffering of the Palestinian, both the physical suffering and the emotional suffering from what happened to them in 1948. Dreams on a Pillow's young mother has fled her home after the murder of her husband, accidentally grabbing a pillow instead of her child. The pillow remains a source of comfort, but she won't be able to interact as freely with the world until she puts it down. Abu Ide says he wants to make sure the game offers a complete harmony between his story and its gameplay, rather than having these elements pull in opposite directions. Merging them was essential. The pillow itself is the secure object. When she holds the pillow, she's somehow safe in her mind, but still the environment around her is very dangerous. When she puts the pillow down to solve a puzzle, to move something, she will lose that security. She'll start seeing the nightmares around her. It's the emotional aspect of the Nakba itself, he continues, which shows not only the normal danger that Palestinians have, but also the psychological impact of losing their dream. The Palestinian did not only lose their homes and their land, but they also lost everything. They lost their memories, their history, and their future. Abu Ide just got into game design through studying computer engineering, which turned into a job. Until like 2010, when there's a huge trend for mobile apps, the expansion of the App Store and Google Play, things like that, there was the new platforms you can actually use to make games. I started playing with these things and discovered that I love making games. From there, I was inspired to read and study more and about not only game development, but also game design. He says he loves games like Limbo, The Walking Dead, Shadow of the Colossus, and The Last of Us, games with a heavy story. Apple's App Store would later play a much different role in Abu Ide's journey as a designer. In 2016, they rejected Layla and the Shadows of War from their games category, telling him it would be more appropriate to categorize your app in news or reference, for example. Abu Ide felt this was a decision based on political content of Layla, which centers a Palestinian family facing armed attacks in 2014 Gaza. Public backlash followed, and the App Store reversed their decision. But this isn't the only obstacle Abu Ide and other Palestinian developers face. As he mentions in Mrs. 2022 video, platforms like Google Play have historically not recognized his region as existing, making connecting to payment gateways difficult, which is why Dreams on a Pillow is being crowdfunded via Launch Good, a platform founded on the principle that Muslims have incredible stories to tell. And that's an image from the game below. I think we're lucky that we have Launch Good because I couldn't do it on any different platform. It's the same problem. They do not recognize this region at all. I'm not sure if they're willing to support a project like this, or at least to put it on their platform. But luckily, we have a crowdfunding platform focused more on the Middle East. They have their ways to overcome the obstacles for the creative people for any campaign on their website. Layla and the Shadows of War was a great success, Abu Ide says. He spoke at GDC, Game Developers Conference, in 2017. He wanted to turn the exposure the game brought into a career. He first started work on Dreams on a Pillow the same year, but couldn't reach a point where it became sustainable. I dropped that project many times. Life here is difficult. You focus on the basic things more than any other thing. You need to survive on a daily basis. You need to provide for your family, and you have no security at all. At that time, I wanted to do something that at least I can sustain my life somehow, and maybe if I can, I will come back to this game. Abu Ide opened a nut roastery near his hometown to support his family while continuing to work on small game projects. Roasted cashews, pistachios, and watermelon seeds were most popular. And I would actually note that we actually do, in America, we do get a lot of our pistachios and cashews from the Middle East and from Palestine and the West Bank specifically. He tells me, but people would often buy almonds too. There's a traditional Palestinian dish named masahan that uses lots of them alongside sumac, chicken, and caramelized onion flatbread. He makes it sound unbearably delicious, and it is. Today reads the following campaign. His roastery sits empty due to travel to the business being unsafe. With what's happening right now, Abu Ida tells me, I thought like I should do this because I feel now I'm more responsible, that I have a responsibility to do this. It's more of a duty, something that I have to do. Today reads the funding campaign. His roastery... Oh, okay. Sorry, I read that again. When you do something authentic, and when you express yourself in a game, and when you show a personal experience, people react to it, people feel it. I had this idea that games have a power before I released Layla. But after I released the game, I saw that as a fact, it's not a theory anymore for me. So when you put your emotion in a game, in your thing, people will feel it. I don't know how, but we feel it. I can remember many nights when I'm coding for Layla. I was coding for Layla. I was like coding with my tears. So I think that somehow turned into something that people felt while they are playing later. I finished the interview by asking Abu Ida something he wishes more people knew about Palestine's game-making scene. You know, this is a personal story for me, trying to make games as a reflection of the reality here in Palestine. Many talented students here want to make games, but it's not possible. It's not that easy. Yesterday, I was giving a session for students from Palestine and some of them in Gaza. They were asking me, how can we make games with lots happening around us? There is a barrier for everything. There's a barrier for life. How can we do this? So I think that the lack of game studios here in Palestine is because people just want the basic things in life, and there's not much room for trial and error. Making games is not an easy job. You need to experiment many things, and you have to make many iterations to reach something that is beautiful and people can actually enjoy. And to do this, you need an ecosystem that helps you. You need publishers, you need investors, you need to build talent, you need connections. And all of that is blocked in Palestine. Many of them are just trying because they love the medium, but they are trying by themselves in their free time. There was many attempts to create studios here in Palestine, but all of them did not work out. Dreams on a Pillow's Launch Good campaign runs until January 13th, and I'm going to have a link in the description down below if you once again want to be a part of this campaign, if you want to check out videos of Dreams on a Pillow. He kind of has like some concepts that he's been sharing with people. And this article I will also link in the description down below. Our last thing I want to check out on the show is a nurse who is frustrated with her parents' fire insurance. It was canceled by the insurance company before the fire. So if we pull this up right here, this is a nurse frustrated her parents' fire insurance was canceled by the insurance company before the fire, which, of course, we all know about nationwide.
I know I'm not supposed to be here, but this is my parents' home.
I know the feeling.
And they just they got canceled from their fire insurance. So they're dealing with this. They're 90 years old. And through the state of California, because of this, they're 90 years old, that they've lived in this house for 75 years, and they've had the same insurance, and these insurance people decided to cancel their fire. And we're going through this, and it just happened, and they have no fire insurance. So thank you, California insurance companies, supporting residents who pay taxes and love California. I know I'm not supposed to be
So once
here.
again, I think this speaks to a wider problem with just healthcare insurance, as we talked about earlier in the show, and just insurance in general, that, it is created as a profit for these companies and for these employees. And I believe that companies like this, they should be tried and sued and people put in jail for this. This should be a crime for not covering people when they need the insurance the most. And people in the comments even say that they wish that insurance, if it doesn't renew or that they should be reimbursed for what they've paid into the insurance, and that should go into something like either a fund to pay for future insurance, or that should be a, you take all the money that you've paid in, you take that out, and you can use it to cover yourself. So whenever the company decides not to be a part of your time of need, you can actually, with government help, say, oh, well, actually, that's my money that I've been paying you this entire time, and you've been tracking how much we've paid you, and that money gets to come back to me now. It isn't just for you to pocket all the cash and then say, well, not my problem. And that's where we stand with insurance companies. It's absolutely insane. So once again, I want to thank you all for watching. This has been Aaron Shack Politics. I want to leave you with one last question here that I have for you. There's a poll here, and I will link it down below as well. There's a poll on the community page here on YouTube. I want to know, would you like a weekly live show, a daily live show? Would you like me to kind of continue how I'm going with just pre-recorded videos and, short clips that are clipped from that, put into the shorts feed, and that's sort of a way that the channel grows, is from people swiping through the shorts feed. I've left a poll there, and I would also like, if you would like to leave your input, what's a good time for the show? What's a good day for the show? Should it be daily? Should it be weekly? Should it be at the end of the day? Should it be in the morning? Whatever. And of course, I know we're serving, a nationwide and even global audience that is watching these videos. But I appreciate you watching. I appreciate you subscribing. This is Aaron Shack Politics. We've gotten over 80,000 views and over 225 subscribers in our first 2 months. I'm very grateful for your support, and I'm trying to bring all these issues to light and more on the way. So thank you for your support. I appreciate you, and I would appreciate your input on the poll as to where to take Aaron Shack Politics in the future and to better deliver the news to you, as well as my opinions. So thank you, take care, be safe, and we'll see you on the next one.